Okay, hello chess players. Today I'm going to discuss a game that I played years ago where I actually ended up losing kind of badly, but it was with an idea that I had prepared very deeply on my computer, and of course back then using the engines that we had back then, which weren't nearly as good as the engines that we have now. But still, when I take this game, at a lot of parts in this game, the computer actually has a hard time analyzing it as well, so what I really want to talk about in this video is how I approached the opening after this game happened, how I changed the way that I played chess, and how I think we all should approach the opening when we play, and how I think we should all sort of approach our preparation. Anyways, if you like content like this and want to see more of it, please hit that subscribe button and click on your notification icon. So, I was playing the King's Indian defense back then, and my opponent continued sort of with the main moves here. He goes after the center, and I castle kingside. Now, when we castle kingside in this position, what we're trying to do is we're trying to coax white into playing e5, because e5 is sort of a mistake. And this actually goes all the way back to Latier versus Fischer, that was played all the way back in 1960. This was in Fischer's book, My 60 Memorable Games. The point is that if white continues with a move like e5, and then he overextends his center, we can sort of poke at that overextended center, and then white doesn't end up with a way to anchor his pieces sort of within this range. And also, white's king is still in the middle, and white doesn't have any development in this situation. And Fischer was able to make all those things really valuable in his game against Latier, and it was a pretty famous game. I'm just going to sort of blitz through it right here, but you can look at more details of this game in my 60 Memorable Games, and I believe I do another video on this channel that just covers this game. But of course that isn't the total focus of this particular video, but basically f5 taking advantage of these unanchored pieces, and we don't have e4 to anchor, and of course the white king is still in the middle, and white's position in the center of the board is still very awkward, and this of course compensates for the fact that black is temporarily down a pawn, which he gets back fairly soon. He just brings his knight to f6, brings his rooks both to the open files. Now he's not even down any material, and then he just sacks on e3 and basically ends the game. He has rook takes e3, rook e3, rook e3, king e3, and then pause the video, see if you can find it. The queen sacrifice, queen f4 check ends the game. The point being, if king takes f4, we have bishop h6 as mate. So that was Latier versus Fischer, played in Leipzig back in 1960. So that's kind of the game everybody's trying to get to when they castle. Now, of course, my opponent, he was a pretty good player. He was a master level player, and he was fairly familiar with what was going on here. So he just played, a normal move. And what I had prepared was I had prepared this move pawn to c6. So the idea behind pawn to c6 is the idea of white's overextended center, beginning with e5, is actually so good for black that you want to give him another opportunity to do it, because if he does it even now, it's not bad for black. Like, even if we lose a tempo, even if we end up having to play d6 and e5, so that's sort of what we're trying to do. We're trying to get white to play e5 on this move. So my opponent didn't play e5. I had plenty of preparation if he played e5, but I also had preparation if he didn't play e5. He played this move bishop e2. So now the question is, what do you do here as black? Do you play d6 and play sort of like a normal King's Indian, but you've thrown in c6, where c6 doesn't seem like it has a whole lot of point to it? That doesn't make a lot of logical sense. Like, if you're just going to play d6, why not play d6 last move and keep this pawn back on c7? That just makes more logical sense. So it feels like you have to play a move like d5 here to try to prove that c6 was doing something, and to try to prove that white should have done something about c6 on the last move. So that's where the sort of my preparation began. It revolved around this move d5. Now, when I did my preparation on my computer at home, I was sort of expecting something along the lines of like c takes d5, c takes d5, e5, knight e4, knight e4, d takes e4, knight g5, because this is the stuff that I'd worked out on my computer. And then I was going to do something like, knight c6, etc. And these positions seemed like they were at least working out for black. Like, I'd actually worked these positions out much deeper, but it seemed like these positions were working out for black and everything was okay. Black was getting plenty of counterplay in the middle for whatever was going on. My opponent did something totally different. My opponent just played e5 immediately, and I'm like, okay, well, how different can it be? I played knight to e4, and then my opponent played the move queen b3. Now, I would discover later that actually h4 was a much stronger move, and I'm going to get back to that, but in the game my opponent played queen to b3. So I continued with knight c3, my opponent continued with bc3, I continued with dc4, bishop c4, I continued with b5, bishop back to d3, bishop e6. My opponent played queen c2, and I played bishop d5. And then my opponent just played a move that I absolutely did not see coming, didn't expect. I thought I'm doing pretty good here. You know, I got my bishop centralized. I got this in a good spot. I'm considering f6 and c5 to break up the position of the center of the board for white. It seems like black's doing pretty good here. So, you know, I was expecting, you know, maybe some normal moves, maybe bishop d2. I don't know. But my opponent played this move h4, which turns out to be like really good. Like, and it makes a lot of logical sense. Like, if you're just looking at the position for the first time with fresh eyes, it makes a lot of logical sense to play h4, h5, because you can't move your knight because it's pinned to the pawn, so that's not even an option. You don't want to castle and have black play bishop takes f3. You don't really run a retreat. You don't want to play bishop e2 and lose a tempo and start running into this counterattack in the middle with c5. You're probably worse there. If you play bishop d2, why? Are you going to castle queenside? It doesn't make any sense. So, like, you actually almost run out of moves to play as white, and then h4 makes perfect sense. Just leave the king on e1, leave the rook on h1. If black plays bishop takes f3 now, gf3, it's not so bad because you're attacking the black king. It makes a ton of logical sense to play h4. It just wasn't something that I came up with in my preparation before the game. And actually, this position didn't even come up in my preparation before the game. I was more taking a look at lines with c6-d5 and you know, etc. So h4, you know, shocker, definitely the best move at this point. And probably at this point already slight edge white. Although if you put this in an engine, the engine has a hard time with this position. It flip-flops a lot. I actually played the correct move. I played c5, which should also just be the logical move. We're trying to break things down. And then h5, and then I played c takes d4. My opponent played h takes g6. And at this point, this was sort of my last opportunity. I had to play f takes g6. These positions are very difficult to calculate for black, to say the least, because f takes g6, you're going to run into bishop takes g6. You have to take back. Queen g6, and then apparently the position is unclear according to the engine after queen c7. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to play something like this over the board. It looks like you're almost lost. Like, you have queen h7 coming, and then all they have to do is cover the f7 square. It looks scary and it looks bad. I don't know if I would be able to play this over the board today. This looks terrifying. So I ended up playing something else. I played bishop takes f3, which turns out to be a major blunder. My opponent actually could have won the game on the spot. Instead, he missed the win. I believe g takes f7 leads to a win very quickly. He played g takes f3. I played knight c6. He played f4. I played dc3, gf7, rook f7, bishop h7, king f8, queen e4, rook c8, bishop e3. And after a few more moves, I ended up with a severe disadvantage. Queen a5, bishop g6, queen b4, queen d5, rook takes f4 out of desperation. Rook h4, great move. c2, bishop back to d2, queen b1 check, takes, rook takes h4, queen d7, rook h1. And again, we start getting into some desperation here in a minute, because after e6, it's basically over. He's coming in with the queen, and he's going to be mating. So, and that's sort of how the game ended. I anchor my rook, but of course everything's too late. He just comes in, and he takes my rook, and I can resign here. I think I played a few more moves. But anyways, this was Warren Harper versus Robert Plunkett, played in the Southwest Open. And I ended up losing. It was a bad game. I ended up losing. Harper is a very good friend of mine, very good player. We've played quite a few times, so if I had to lose to somebody, it wasn't such a terrible thing to lose to him. But I was very disappointed in what was going on with the opening, so I wanted to go back and I wanted to look at sort of where did things go wrong. Like, at what point did I need to change things to sort of keep this idea in my opening repertoire? So I have to go all the way back to the beginning and see where did things start, you know, going off the rails? What changes do I need to make this playable? And I was looking at e5, knight e4, queen b3, and one of the things I noticed was it was actually possible for him, instead of queen b3, to just play h4 right away. So, I mean, I didn't see anything better than d5 in this position, because d6 is super passive. So if I'm going to play d6, why not play it last move? And then after e5, I don't really see anything better than knight e4, because you gotta play something. And now here, instead of queen b3, he could have played the exact same idea one move earlier. He could have played h4. And the engine just gives this his major advantage, white. So I'm sitting here trying to save these ideas, trying to save this line, but it's breaking apart at its inception. It's pretty much like there's not a whole lot of room for making changes here. I can either not play d5 or not play knight e4. That's where I'm at this point, because h4, just the idea itself, even a move sooner is so much stronger than when he played it that I have to just reconsider this whole thing. So that's what I did. I reconsidered the whole thing, and I just stopped playing c6 entirely. I just switched over to d6 on the previous move. Instead of playing c6, I just switched over to d6. Now, that being said, I've seen other grandmasters essay c6. I don't know exactly what they have in mind if their opponent just plays bishop e2, but of course I don't need to know exactly what they have in mind, because that's their preparation, it's not mine. I need to have something in mind. And this brings me back to just kind of talking about generally how we prepare preparation. Preparation is what you need to prepare for yourself. You need to understand the middle games, and you need to understand what's going on, and you need to understand the ideas. And you also have to be relatively objective. If the line just isn't any good and you don't know how to make it work, you should probably just focus your energy on something that works. I have a limited amount of energy that I'm willing to put into, all of my opening preparation. As a player, you have other things that you need to work on to become a better player. You need to work on your tactics. You need to work on your endgames. You need to, do a lot of different types of drills to become a better player in general. You don't want to waste an enormous amount of time trying to save an opening where the computer says that you're -1.5 or -2. So just throw it away. Try something else. Play a different move. It's okay. And that's one of the issues that I see with a lot of younger players, is they get way too attached to their opening preparation. As soon as you lose that attachment, as soon as you're able to just, change your openings when you see problems, and just play something different, and just, focus your energy on getting better at those other parts of the games. The opening is an important part of the game. It's a part of the game that we do need to put energy into. It's a part of the game that we do need to prepare very deeply, because we don't want to get caught. We don't want to lose games like this, where actually I sort of lost the game without leaving my preparation in a lot of ways. But the way that we do that is we have to be somewhat flexible with the way that we approach the opening, and we have to be somewhat objective, and then that way we can take more of our energy and focus on all the other things that matter when it comes to improving our chess game. So I stopped playing c6 against this move order against knight f3. I stopped playing c6 altogether, and instead I went back to just playing d6. And of course, these days I don't even play the King's Indian defense at all, if that tells you anything. So I'm willing to throw away the whole King's Indian defense and just play like a Slav, or play a QGD. I play the QGD a lot now, but it's part of the evolution of playing chess. We have to be flexible with our openings, and when we face struggles like this, we either try to find improvements or we just switch to something else. Some of the best opening advice I got years ago from a grandmaster was, look, he said, in an opening you have 3 options at any given point. He said, you can play the best move, you can play the move you like, or you can play something different. You can play something new. You can invent something. So those are your 3 options. So anyways, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you learned something new about chess, and I hope you can use some of these ideas in your own games. Thank you very much for watching.